Welcome to the SCL podcast, filmed in the MD Acoustics anechoic chamber at their testing facility in beautiful Gilbert, Arizona. Today, we welcome Jeff Fullerton and Matthew Golden. Jeff Fullerton is a principal acoustical consultant with deep experience in architectural acoustics, mechanical noise and vibration control, and community sound management. He has supported projects across performing arts, education, government, healthcare, corporate, industrial, and residential sectors, providing guidance from early design through post-occupancy. This includes in situ testing, complex noise mitigation, and expert witness work. Before joining Stantec, Jeff led Intertek's acoustics group for 8 years and spent nearly 2 decades at Intertek, where he directed the architectural acoustics group and managed large teams and project portfolios. Jeff has served multiple terms on the INCE Board of Directors, taught acoustics at Boston Architectural College, and began his career as a mechanical engineer designing next-generation crash test dummies. Matthew Golden is an acoustician with 20 years of experience in product development, building science, and technical consulting. With both a mechanical engineering and acoustics degree from Penn State, he contributed to field testing, vibration analysis, material development, and lab modernization. His early work at Wilson Earrig, Quiet Solution, and Kinetics Noise Control established his blend of hands-on engineering and practical innovation. He later led testing at Stantec, taught acoustics at American University, and spent nearly a decade as director of R&D at Plytech, overseeing patents, product launches, and research growth. Now a principal consultant with Intertek's Building Science Solutions Group, Matthew applies deep technical expertise to complex acoustical challenges.
Hey guys, welcome to SCL Podcast. We're excited to have Jeff Fullerton, Matt Golden.
Thank you.
Jeff from Stantec, and Matt's from Intertek. We got 2 techs.
Yes.
So we're excited to have you guys on the podcast today. I think we'll just dive right into it, right? We're excited. Obviously been a fan of Intertek for a long time. Stantec, we definitely know who they are too. So we're excited to have you guys here, and we're excited to talk a little bit about standards, right? Acoustical standards and badging. So why don't you guys, we're going to start with Jeff first. Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about your background real quick, where you come from, and then we'll ask Matt the same question.
Sounds great. So I was fortunate in school, in college, I was able to start a mechanical engineering degree and work in a performing arts center at the same time. And I connected the two eventually, my academic and practical experience, and eventually made my way to Acoustical, another tech in my history, where I was for 20 years. And then after 20 years, I thought, hey, let's try something new, and joined Intertek and built a team out. Matt joined me after 6 of those years, and I was really excited to have his capabilities. And recently, I decided to make a switch over to Stantec, so the latest tech in my list of techs that I've added to my career. And Matt and I can talk about how we've gotten to this point where we now have this exciting program coming out. But let him introduce his background.
Yeah, I think I'd tie you because I also think I have 3 techs background. So I went to Penn State for undergrad, mechanical engineering, then found out the best kept secret at Penn State is the acoustics program. And I managed to kind of weasel my way there as an undergrad into the lab, so much so that my first day of grad school there, the older grad students were coming up to me because they thought I wasn't a new student. They're like, but you're already here. I'm like, no, I'm a new student. So I definitely been there for a while. And afterwards, after grad school, I jumped into consulting at Wilson Earrig Associates, spent a little bit of time there. But then I transferred over to product development, and I spent 20 years in product development. Quiet Solution, Quiet Rock, changed the name of the company that's now owned by Pavco. Kinetics Noise Control for a bunch of years. I invented a couple of products for them. And then I moved to DC and worked for Stantec for 2 short years in between. And then I went to Plytech up in Toronto, still working from DC. Still working from DC, so doing that commute. And after 9 years or so, I was getting a little bored, actually, because I had solved a lot of the problems I had set out to solve. And I was talking to Jeff about it, trying to see what else might be around. And Jeff's like, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" And so then I'm like, okay. So I came to Intertek.
That is awesome.
How to name an acoustics company.
That's right. Well,
we really missed out on that tech thing.
You guys are true techies. That's the cool part about it, right? Like, you're the true techies. That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure they're all spelled differently. Yeah, I think so. All the techs.
Except for Scantech and Intertek. Those techs are TEK, right?
Are they? I can't remember. I don't know. The Plytech is TEQ.
Well, and I was going to use this to pivot. Matt says all the best things come out of sitting around a bar having a beer. And so we think it goes back to like 2018. We were sitting at a bar in Chicago at the Internoise convention, and we started talking about how, I was at Intertek. Intertek's very focused on testing and measurements and standards. And Matt chimed in that, well, there's a lot of standards, but people don't know them.
I've been involved in once I went over to manufacturing, I started going to ASTM, and what I noticed is when I would go to conferences, there were a lot of consultants, or I would read test reports from consultants from jobs. A lot of people were saying that they perform a certain, either ASTM E336 for airborne sound transmission or E1007 for impact noise. And they're like, we ran it according to standard. And I look at their report, I'm like, no, you didn't. and I realized that there were a lot of people, including myself, there are still things that I dig through and find, I'm like, oh, the standard says that? So they're not straightforward. And I realized there needed to be a way to show that you actually knew what a standard was and knew how to read it and knew possibly, how to test to the standard to help raise the bar for the entire industry. So
interesting.
Because I think we understand the concepts of the standards. It's the details that are the difficulties.
And the devil is in those details.
Exactly. And Matt always adds more complexity by changing the standards every couple of years, or maybe several times in a year.
We're trying. So one of the things, for example, that was always funny when I would talk to people is like, hey, do you know how to do the background noise correction in 336 and 1007? They're like, yeah, sure. It's this. You do it the same way for both standards? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, then you're doing it wrong. Because the background noise correction had been different between the two, background noise adjustment between the two standards. And, we realized that this was wrong. This was bad. And so not only did I embark on a 8-year project to start creating a technical badge program, I also embarked on a 20-year program in the middle of it at ASTM to create functional standards so that things like background noise adjustment are all going to be located in one place in all of our standards that say the same thing.
Oh,
so
man, this is going to be so much work to update. It's good work you're doing, but man, it makes a lot of work for everyone.
Does our European counterparts, do you think they sit around and do the same thing, or do they have it better than us? Because that's an obvious question to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the two standards organizations work very differently between ISO and ASTM. ASTM is a very consensus-based organization. Everyone's voice has to be heard. We'll get a vote. If you vote negative, we have to address your negative. And so and it's a lot more fluid. So because of that, one standard could change without affecting another one. And maybe this one changes, but we don't change the same thing in this other standard. And so that's how these things have popped up. Whereas with ISO, they have a convener, the person that's going to run the committee, and who has quite a bit of say. And they put together a draft with some other people's input, and they put it out and ask each country to vote. And each country gets one vote. And so, and then it comes back, and if the convener doesn't like what you said, he goes, "Oh, well, it passed," and they move on.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's
Wow.
yeah, it's a very different process. You know,
And and on these ASTM boards, you know, in my mind, I feel like it's a whole bunch of people sitting somewhere in some boardroom, and you get together and you're like, let's just talk about this, and you may be hashing it out or disagreeing. Is this like 10 people, 3 people, or does it change? Like, can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
yeah. So when I first joined, it was painful. I was the youngest person in the room by probably 15, 20 years. But I was learning a lot from those. And we would be wordsmithing the standards in the meeting. It was so painful, so slow.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then over time, Jeff, actually, in working with Jeff on this program, Jeff taught me an amazing way to work together, which was to book an hour in your calendar. And then that's not a meeting. You're working. You just both opened up the document. We shared it, and we just both sat there working on our sections. And when we had something to say, we would say it. But I started to bring that to ASTM, about 4 or 5 people. So now we have, we call them, I guess, focus groups for now.
Sure.
They're not anything official, but we get 4 or 5 people to write the standard together. And now we go to committee week twice a year. We say, okay, we want to do generally this in standard. Does everyone agree with the general direction? Yeah, we take in, and maybe we'll show some language, whatnot. But then it goes out to ballot. Eventually, everyone gets to read it, vote up or down. If you negative, you got to put in your reason. And then we come back, and at the next meeting, we have to discuss it and vote on it and address it accordingly through all of ASTM's procedures.
Huh. Gotcha.
So, standards are written by the people that show up.
There you go.
I used to think they were written by the smartest people in the room, and then somehow I became the person in the room. So now I know that's not true.
I say it sounds like my HOA.
A little bit.
Everything's built on who shows up, right?
Yeah.
So if you got a problem, show up.
And then the other thing is this:
Exactly.
it's volunteer, right?
Yeah.
Full-fledged volunteer. It's a labor of love. It's nothing that I think a lot of people forget. Like, it's totally volunteer, and you're doing this because you love your career, you love the industry, and you show up and do it. That's awesome. And
Mike, it's worse than volunteer. You pay to go to the conference.
It is. That's true. But
no. You don't pay to go to the conference. The conferences are actually free. There's an activity fee. But you pay to be a member of ASTM.
Well, you got to pay, but you got to pay for the hotel, and if you're lucky, the company will pay for you. I mean, that's the other thing. So, because you guys are a part of these organizations, do you guys have sponsorship behind you from your companies? That's a random question, I know, but it puts a target on my back potentially.
I mean, Jeff. It depends on what company.
Okay, there you go.
Well, you've got like the 4 techs covered.
Yeah, you got the techs. You got the techs covered there.
The manufacturers pretty much send you.
Okay.
Because it's in their interest to stay on top of the standards.
Got it.
The consulting firms, it's a little bit more
It's tricky.
to convince people to let you go.
Yeah.
But people do it.
We do it. I mean, for us personally, not to throw a plug in there, but we always sanction kind of group research, and then we select somebody to go from our group, and the company for sure pays for it. Because we, personally, I believe it's like to further, advance acoustics or whatever we're looking at. So I think it's cool that you guys are sitting there though, and on this. And I talk about this internally. Like, at some point we need to participate. We just don't have tech on the end though. Now we know what we got to do.
And let's let Matt do his plug, because if you become a member of ASTM, you
Yeah.
can participate and you get the
Yes.
standards for the big fee of.
I think $125 a year right now.
Oh,
So
that covers like 3 or 4 standards. Easy.
yeah, that's 2 standards, and you paid for it. So, and then you also get ballots, and you know what's happening. I really try to convince every firm out there to at least have somebody be a member. You don't have to show up or anything, but be a member and pay attention to the emails when they come in. That's it.
Samuel.
And
Yeah, I know.
He's the smartest one here, so
That's not true.
we like to look
That's
at
not
him
true.
for that. No,
Yeah, that'll be my job.
like I said, it doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room.
yeah. Oh, well that. No, that's good.
This is something we could also delegate to Joel. Joel would be great.
Joel would be
You
good.
made this up.
Joel, if you're listening, sorry, buddy, you're gonna go. You're gonna be no.
Hope
So-
you like standards.
Let me ask you this. So you kind of broached on a subject real quick, like interpretation of standards, right? And you're talking about E336. So for the podcast listeners who don't even know what we're talking about, they're in acoustics, but maybe they like audio, and they're like, "What's E336?" Can you guys give me, maybe Jeff, quick rundown? What is E336?
So let me take a step back and I'll create a framework that we'll put these into. So Matt and I realized that there are standards for testing assemblies, and testing assemblies is sort of one activity that has a bunch of standards associated with it. E336, ASTM E336, the airborne sound insulation testing of partitions in buildings, is that standard. Yeah, and the title will vary significantly from what I said, but not too badly. So that standard, and the E1007, which is the field measurement using a tapping machine of the impact sound insulation of floor assemblies or something of that ilk. Both of those standards are going to fit into this building acoustics or partition assembly type of badging program that we're going to have, along with measuring the sound decay. And so that's going to go in as one group of standards, and you'll learn about those. The actual first program that we're releasing as we speak, as this podcast is going, is what we're calling the indoor-outdoor standards. And so that's for ANSI and ASA standards, and also ASTM standards for measuring either in rooms or outdoors. And this was another topic that I saw, that when you have the chance to peer review other consultants' work and even our own work, there's very few instances where people are referring to, how are you doing your measurements? How are you setting up your microphone? What are the weather conditions? And all the things that these standards include, so that we can communicate very clearly and effectively of what's been done, what was happening, and all of those details. So that first program of standards is being released now, and that includes, oh boy, let's see, I think 4 ASTM and ANSI standards, of which S12.9 has 7 parts. And of those 7 parts, I think we cover 4 of them comprehensively, and we mentioned the other 3. That section of the program has been done by RSG. RSG is overseeing both of the programs, but they were particularly important with creating the videos and the presentations for that. We're really excited. That one's being released as we speak, and hopefully we've had beta testers go through it and give us feedback. It feels like it's going in the right direction, and we're eager for the public. Well, let's say we're eager for the INCE membership to soon dive into it and start giving us more feedback, but that'll be the first badging program that gets going.
That's awesome.
And could I possibly ask in post, if you put a big clickable link right down here of the INCE webpage?
Yeah, of course.
Where, under careers and education, technical badge program, you can get to it and sign right up.
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome.
We'll do for sure do that.
And So on that note, let's address this before we go any further. So INCE has a board certification program,
Okay.
and there are people. Matt, do you remember how many? Like 250 board certified
Not 200.
members?
We're just
200?
crossing over 200. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So 200 or so people who have gone through essentially a professional engineering type of process where they have 5 years of work experience, they have academic experience, they take an 8-hour exam that includes both open-ended questions and also multiple choice questions. And through that process and referrals and recommendations, through that process, they then submit all that information to the INCE board or certification board, which is separate from the
Yes.
INCE board to make that distinct. And they essentially earn a board certification in noise control engineering. And so they are very similar in process to the professional engineering licenses that you see mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and all of them basically earn. That is a distinctly different program from this.
Okay.
And the analogy we like to make is when you're building your home and you need a contractor to come in and build something, you don't go out and get a professional engineer. That professional engineer knows how to draw things and design things, but the person who's going to do the work is someone who's licensed. And that contractor hopefully is licensed, let's say, and is doing your work. And if they're licensed, you have a higher quality or higher confidence that the quality of the outcome will be better. This program is in the same vein. Even though you could have a certification on the design of noise control engineering things, the badging program is more the contractor type of certification or quality stamp that you know what you're doing with standards. And so that's the distinction. Somebody who has a certification, board certification with INCE, isn't a pass on getting their badging. And I will take that as an example myself. I have learned so much through this process about the standards. And just because I had my board certification for the last, 15 years, doesn't mean I know the standards. And so you need to go through this program and earn this badge to become badged for the technical aspects that this program will deliver.
And then after you're badged, so once we get these programs rolled out, we get to start work immediately on the on the renewal process. So right now we're hoping to have programs so that every 2 years you sign up, you run through a quick learning class. Hey, this is what's changed in the standards. And oh, this is something that's really tricky that most people forget about this standard. And then you watch that and you go and click on the click a quick quiz or a test afterwards, kind of like, when HR makes you take a test on, some sort of safety ethics or something,
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're not going to make it, we're not going to make it hard to do, but we're going to make it thorough and that people are learning.
I love this distinction between like the INCE board certification process and this badging process. I think it's like really validating for part of the way that we divide our work in our company. For example, I trust Robert to go and do field measurements a lot more than myself because there's an incredible body of knowledge to actually go and do a physical measurement. So for me, my background, I've got a bachelor's degree in applied physics. I've got a master's degree in mechanical engineering and acoustics. I'm INCE board certified, right? Robert doesn't have any of those credentials. His degree is in sociology, but he has a huge volume of field experience. He's been working for our company for a long time, and he gets the time to play with the meters and figure out, hey, why did the batteries shut off if you attach a solar panel to it or not? He gets the time to figure out, okay, but how long does it take to get all of these check marks to appear when I do an RT60 measurement? And so like when it comes to field measurements, it's a different skill set, and it takes an incredible amount of work to get to that level. And so I actually love this concept of just having a different credential for that. And although there's overlap in those skill sets, they're not the same.
Oh no, and it's a lot like when I was at Plytech and director of R&D there. I had a lab. I had built up a lab, and I had a bunch of engineers that were that I was training all sorts of acoustics and vibration. And I'd be coming up to Washington D.C. to Toronto, and I told them, "Hey, look, guys, within 6 months, you're going to get to the point when you see me walking up to the machine, you're going to come running because you don't want me to screw it up." And they're like, "No, we won't get there." And I'm like, "No, you better get to that point." Sure enough, 6 months later, I walked up there. I was doing some, screwed up the test, and they realized that just because you might know the theory of something doesn't mean you know how to actually make the equipment do what you want it to do.
For this badging program, is this open to non-members of INCE? Is this
Yes.
Okay, so this, you don't have to be a member. Interesting. Okay.
And
What's the
so is
vision?
the
What's the vision
certification.
on this? That was going to be my question, is like, who is this open to? What's the vision for that? Because like, how many
Well,
INCE, I guess,
so-
let me ask you a quick question. Sorry. How many INCE members do we have, or are there? 1,000? A little over that?
I think it's like 800.
Under, I don't remember.
Yeah, approaching 900 or so.
Okay. So
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
not every
consulting
consulting firm has like everybody's an INCE member, right? So okay. Sorry, Jeff, cut you off. Go for it.
Well, so our ultimate idea with this is that will educate people on the standards. And ideally, the first people who are going to do this are going to be the consultants who are going out and using these standards to do either their long-term measurements, short-term measurements, assessments of mechanical systems, things like that, or the testing in the field that they're doing for their clients. And over time, they should give the clients and the industry greater confidence that people who have this badge are following the standards and delivering a higher quality, consistent outcome. We also anticipate, because this is a similar program and sort of modeled after one that was done in the UK, and Matt knows more about this program. And actually, I'll turn it over to you, Matt. Why don't you talk about is it the IOA system?
Yeah, so the IOA, the Institute of Acoustics, has a what do they call it? They have a course, you get a degree, or I can't remember what they call it exactly, but it's actually somewhere in between these two things, between the board certification. What they go through is not as hardcore technical math as the INCE board cert, but it's more hands-on than what we're able to pull off right now for the tech badge. I mean, we would love to have everyone come together and bring your meters and show us that you know how to do the test. We just couldn't figure out a way to do that economically and efficiently for the marketplace. So we have this is the first step, and we'll go from there. But in the UK, they definitely all ghost places, and they actually learn how to not only follow the standards, but then use the equipment as well. And from what I've heard, it works very well for them.
I feel like their pace of life is way slower, though. Everything in Europe just feels awesome to me every time I look at it, and I'm just like, it's like here you're either on the highway or you're off the highway. Maybe I'm wrong there, but every time they're like, look, we're taking measurements, and it's a grassy field. They got wind turbines maybe, and it's just wind. Oh. And here, it's like, yeah, there's grassy fields, but nobody really cares what's going on there. No, we care about the residents over here and the crazy busy city life. And I mean, I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it.
I agree. Jeff and I had a measurement project together. I won't name names of the equipment, but we bought some brand new equipment, and it was designed for doing a couple measurements a day. It was really nice if you want to do a couple of measurements a day. Unfortunately, Jeff and I were trying to do 20 to 30 measurements a day. And what we found, the software wasn't designed to have that much data in one file. And so it just, the manufacturer is like, okay, we're going to fix that.
And so let's return to the IOA program. The
Yeah.
one thing I think we heard that they learned was initially consultants loved it. They all got to their
Yeah.
certification in the program and were doing this testing. But over time, outside industry came in
Yes.
and other people who did testing agencies
Yes.
came in, got their certification, and they actually lowered the price.
Yes.
And made it more affordable and more accessible and, again, more consistent in the outcome. So one of the things Matt and I see as a positive is hopefully we'll introduce more people to our industry. Sometimes we go to the INCE conferences and we feel like we're seeing the same people over and over. And yeah, there's some new, younger faces showing up, which is great. But man, wouldn't it be great if we could connect with 1,000 new people every year who are doing acoustical testing and know the system that we're actually promoting and providing to them. And hopefully that will help sustain INCE over the long term, but also just create better discussions in the industry. The drawback and the negative is it may drive down prices for testing, which our clients will love, but might be a little hard for the consulting agencies. And we might find that the testing becomes a new industry as opposed to the consulting industry doing that testing.
Well, but the consultants aren't testing every piece of HVAC equipment that needs tested. Usually they hand it to some guy with a cell phone app, and he doesn't know what the sound power standard is. So I just see like an immense positive way for this to improve noise measurements in an industry where all you need is a microphone, but if that's what you're doing, then that test is not even comparable to someone that actually is following a standard.
Yeah, definitely. We thought about the air balancers when they're balancing the HVAC systems. They're doing background noise measurements. We figure it's going to reach out to a lot of undergrads who are, get interested in acoustics and want to show their potential employers that they have what it takes to be a consultant. So they might go get these badges ahead of time. For the consulting firm, you hire somebody new, and instead of having a senior guy spend 2 weeks working with them trying to teach them the standard, you can you can just say, hey, so how about first you take this course, go through it, learn about the standard, and then you can come with me out into the field and we'll talk more about it.
Sorry, go on for it, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we think that is also going to be a great value proposition for a lot of firms.
Is this going to be like always online? Like this is you? So you said RSG has developed a course video, so this will be something you can do kind of day, evening, night, or whatever per your schedule. That's awesome. Yeah. And this is the link on INCE is going to be there. Like there will be a link that we can show in here that's the link you're talking about. Okay.
Right here. Right
here. All right.
Shows up.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and our goal was to create a system that is available in all 50 states. So you don't have to come to the 48 states if you're living in Alaska. Yeah. And extend that to Canada. Again, the goal is to have this as accessible to people as possible. So that is hopefully what we'll deliver. And as Matt sort of alluded to, this is version 1. And we're going to learn, and version 2, as we develop, is probably going to get far better.
Jeff, I'm amazed you're willing to call it version 1. It is we are volunteers, and as Jeff and I have said many times, if either of us had any clue how long it would take and how much work would be in it, we would never have touched it.
How long has that taken?
We've been working on it since 2018.
Oh, so since 2018.
Wow.
Through the pandemic, I mean, I think, and we kept having optimistic thoughts. It was just going to take us a year. We just have to put together this, and then we'll have it done. And yeah, it's challenging on a volunteer level to make this happen. Thankfully, INCE invested in this, so they invested in having RSG create the program, so they've been paid. The hard part's been the volunteers to keep up with the paid people who are creating content, but we're there. And again, the first program is released and is able to be signed up for. Course 2, we're aiming for that to be ready by late spring, early summer next year.
I was hoping to see, like, when I think about like the outdoor indoor kind of like stuff as like expert witness work, right? When you get it, it's an obviously low hanging fruit place where you can argue for repeatability. I wonder, this is just me thinking, will this actually help navigate those, like, so you have less disputes? Or is it a place where you're like, hey, you didn't take this badge, so therefore, you're not as elite as we are? I'm just curious to see how that would happen.
Yeah, when we get to lawsuits, certainly lawyers like anything that qualifies somebody as distinctly different from others. So if you don't have this badge and you're going into a lawsuit, you've got a bit of a risk. So I think going through this program, having those badges that you can point to say, I've passed this course, I've done this exam, and I'm following what was taught, I think that's going to give you a leg up. And again, I think our hope is that this makes the reports that come out of firms more consistent. The information should be all included. The standards say what you should include, but very rarely is that actually included in people's reports. So I think there are firms that are already doing some of these things, and for them, I suspect this won't be much of an issue. But there's a lot of firms that don't follow these approaches that the standards request, and I think they're the ones who are going to have maybe a little more of a challenge getting up to speed with what's expected out of these standards.
And as far as like being required for expert witnessing or whatever, or at a municipality, I had some older engineers in the industry complain to me. They're like, who are you to tell me I can't do this measurement? And I'm like, thank you. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, thank you. You think I'm going to be so successful so quickly that you will have to get this badge? It is a long process. It is a long horizon thing, but I think it will catch on over time.
Along that line, we're hoping that WELL and LEAD and other voluntary programs might include this as one of the requirements for the people doing the verification testing. So that, again, you've got somebody knowledgeable about how to do these tests and delivers the results that those programs need to verify that some of those buildings are well designed. So yeah, we're excited to partner with other organizations to show that these qualified badged individuals are people that should be sought.
Yep. And we've been talking about what other badges can there be, where we have this indoor and outdoor noise measurement standard badge, then the building acoustic standard, so that'll just be transmission loss and reverberation time and impact noise. But then there are all sorts of other standards out there. There are HVAC standards, there's sound power standards, AHRI has standards. There's a lot of standards organizations out there that may be able to benefit from a similar kind of program. And we recognize that this is not right for every single situation, such as laboratory testing. Why, at one level, we would love it. On the other hand, that program would be taken by 10 people, and that's it, or 20 people. Yeah. And so it's just from a business point of view for INCE, it doesn't make sense to do a laboratory version of the standard.
Yeah.
It's been fun in talking about this program and thinking of the scalability. We've thought, shouldn't there be a vibration measurements? Well, that would be nice, except there are really a lack of vibration standards. So Matt's now working on standards for how to do vibration measurements. So hopefully, again, the scalability will come over time, and we'll have ways in which we can, again, as a community and as an industry, do things more consistently.
Some of the, like, I don't want to call it the IP, right, of some firms, but a lot of them pride themselves on a way or methodology. Maybe there's a standard, but maybe they also think outside the box, right? And it's kind of like a black box You can't quite see what's inside this black box, but this is how we do it. I like the idea. When I first started my career and I was introduced to it via PhD, you know, I was asking them questions like, why are we doing this? What's going on here? And like, you know, there's a lot of things like, well, I can't quite tell you, but this is from how we did it at Bolt, Brannick, and Newman, right? Because that's where he worked. And I was like, okay. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, you know, not that they're winging it. It's just that they read through it, a standard, and then they come up with a certain way or protocol, right? And, you know, do they really want to transfer that information? I like that there's a central location. That is, there's a training, and I call it mentorship. Like, part of the podcast is mentorship, right? You kind of want everybody to succeed. I'm not saying everybody needs to play at the same level, but I also think there needs to be a place, like a jumping point that helps people kind of go from there, and then we can elevate it. Because the reality is like in 20 years from now, we don't know what it's going to be like. Samuel and I were just talking, like, who introduced ASTC or AIIC or HIIC versus LIIC, or why can't it just be FSTC?
Trent Nightingale, Alf Warnock, John Levert, who Dong.
Yeah, no, I know, but like the confusion really does exist in some of these things, right? So, so to sit there and I'm sure everybody has different opinions and all that stuff, right? But it's like, at some point, you know, someone's like, no, this is the standard. We're going to stick to this. But again, where you have a centralized place, people who volunteer their time, who've literally sat in the room and thought about it, here's where it's at. Yeah. I have some other thoughts we'll talk about offline on how to even keep them even more streamlined, but I think it's great. I love it.
Once again, if I may make the second plug about joining ASTM, so if we could also get a link for ASTM International, ASTM.org. We're all the acoustical standards are made by the Building and Environmental Acoustics Committee E33. So you could go sign up and you join the main committee of E33, and then there are a bunch of subcommittees, and each one of these subcommittees handles a different section of our standards. One's for airborne standards, one's for absorption, one's for mechanical, one's for impact noise. So we've kind of broken them up, and you can sign up and get involved in whichever ones you're interested in.
And along that lines, hopefully over time, if there are issues with how these standards are being applied and how they're being used, hopefully that feeds back to the committees to get these standards updated and recertified with all the badging people who are out there. So again, we hope this is a circular loop.
Sure. That brings me up to my next question. Just in general, how durable are the standards that we have? For example, an STC test from 50 years ago to 20 years ago to now, how different is the standard these things are measured to? And is an STC 50 from 1995 the same as an STC 50 in 2025?
Oh my God. So at the last ASTM meeting, we celebrated 75 years of acoustic standards because ASTM E90, the transmission law standard, was first published in 1950 as a tentative standard and published by JAZA, joint with ASTM.
Oh, there you go.
And Norrell, then many people know Norrell. Norrell, a legend in the community, and he put together a history. He went through all of the standards because ASTM has most of them, and then the ones that they didn't have, we've managed to find. And he got all the changes for time. And when you realize that they first started doing transmission loss by using decay time to measure transmission loss. So they would measure decay time in both rooms. They would turn on the sound level and they would measure one decay time to know how loud it was in this room, because you can then back out how loud it was. Go in this room, do the same thing. And then, so if you make it the sound in one room and then you listen to how long the decay is in the other room, you can actually go back and figure out how loud it was in the start. And, some amazing stuff how they did it at first with no microphones. So we're a long way from that. We do things in half octaves. instead of 1/3 octaves.
Huh.
And over time, as instrumentation has gotten better, we've started to change the standards. Like we're also going to be seeing a push to impulse response. There's a new standard out on measuring impulse response for a room to measure the reverberation time. And then from there, we'll incorporate it into a bunch of other standards. And but really, I say if a test is older than 20 years old, it's not that valid anymore. It's not necessarily the test method, it's the materials. You know, drywall is not drywall what it was 20 years ago. You know, there's all these ultralight and so on and so forth. So in that sense, you really want to make sure that your standard is somewhat recent. It's not like you're using a test report. For those in the industry, probably know the Mason test report that they have on their spring jack-up floor at Riverbank Labs, and people talking about it. And I look at people, I'm like, this tester is older than I am. Why are we using it?
Interesting.
So the short answer is test reports do have a shelf life. They're not incredibly durable past 20 years or so. And part of that is driven by changes in the standards, but more often than not, changes in the technology used to update.
Whether it's the transducers or the materials, right?
Yeah.
The building materials.
It's much more the materials than the transducer side, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at studs. Studs these days are nothing like the studs that were built 30 years ago. They're so much more engineered than they are now, and all for the right reasons. It's to compare a test from 30 years ago to a stud of today, you're looking at apples and oranges.
Cool. That's good information. I like that.
Yeah, never thought of it.
All right. Well, I think, is there anything else you guys have to say before we close this podcast? We really appreciate you guys jumping on here and kind of giving the badging process here. I think it's super valid, good information.
We appreciate being part of this. You've got a great podcast series going, and if people are seeing this podcast for the first time, go to some of the others. You'll find them so much more interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was fun.